Hey guys, we're here with Shoot the Shit podcast, and we are finally back after a week of hell with this coronavirus. Obviously, I've been delayed. I've said it on my Instagram page, I've said it on Facebook. I've been delayed just due to dealing with work stuff, but now we're back, and I got two guests for you guys tonight. And I have Kenneth from Positive Minds Only, and I got Gene from Third Eye Cinema. And obviously, these guys obviously host their own podcast, so it's going to be pretty interesting to me to kind of see what they do and kind of work with. I guess I could call them my people. I don't even know how to say that, but obviously podcasts.
Fellow podcasters.
Right. We're all just talking to ourselves half the time to practice for this anyway. So
exactly.
Cool. But obviously whoever wants to go first, man. You want to go first, Kenneth?
Yeah, I'll go first. So my name's Kenneth, of course, and I'm the creator and host of Positive Minds Only podcast, a podcast about spirituality, reincarnation, success, meeting your goals, overcoming obstacles. And it's basically about my journey to my success. That's why I started the podcast, was basically because I was trying to be successful at something. And I couldn't do YouTube, or I wasn't consistent at YouTube. And I love to speak. I love to have conversations. So podcasting was just like a natural fit for me. But I've been doing it since 2018, since November 2018. And like I said, it's been like one of my most consistent projects. And I love to do it. So thank you for having me as a guest today.
Sure, man. I'm glad you're here. You were actually the first one I think that responded, which was pretty dope. As far as like reaching out for co-host or just special guest, because I mean that's what I kind of want the show to be about. It's funny. I think I also got like a chef lined up. I got quite a few people coming up outside of y'all, which is super interesting. But I'm excited to do that for sure. Cool, Jen. What do you got?
Oh boy. Well, let's see. I'll try to keep it as short as he did for the moment. I've been involved with 4 separate podcasts. I don't know if any of you out there remember At Eye Level. You can find it on archives at this point, or you can head over to the Facebook page, which was the only official arm of the show, which was facebook.com/At Eye Level, and that'll point you to where you need to go to find all those episodes. And that was actually my friend from school way back when had set up a podcast and just kind of invited a few of us on. We'd reconnected after many years of not seeing each other. You know, he was across the country. We went to the exact opposite coast. He was out in LA. And just kind of out of the blue, we started talking again. He's like, yeah, I'm doing this thing, this radio show. You got to come on. And we had done a lot of this kind of stuff back when. Just, what do you want to call it? We would do it on boom boxes with recorders, and he had like a little mixing board and, just a bunch of screwing around, playing guitar, BS and whatever. And we were passing them around the school. So this was not new to me. It was just, now it's on the internet. I'm like, all right, fine. I'll come on. And it turned into something pretty quickly. And before you know it, I think that was like June or July of 2011. And by December, he just kind of pushed me. He's like, why don't you get your own podcast? And we'll just kind of link together and whatever. And I didn't want to do that at first, but then eventually I did really quickly after that. But I had already gotten 2 movie guests on. I had SOV directors Mark Polonia and Tim Ritter were originally recorded at At Eye Level. And then I just edited them properly and brought them over to the show later. So you can find them on the Third Eye Cinema show. And that's what happened. Then I did Third Eye Cinema alongside At Eye Level for many years. It was probably 2012, the beginning of that. Had big name guests right away, which was amazing to me. It's like, I don't even have a podcast yet. And people are like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. So got a lot of film people on there. And then eventually I started running out of cult film people of a certain vintage, from the 60s and 70s and whatever. Because, people are aging, people are dying off, people are unavailable, whatever. And some people just didn't respond. So by the time I was like, well, okay, where am I going to go now? What else am I going to do with this? And I listened to a lot of metal and punk and goth. So I started tackling people from there. And the biggest responses I got was from the metal community. So we started doing a lot of interviews. And it's the same thing throughout. It was all career-length interviews, as much as I could squeeze in. Sometimes with some of these people, I got a half an hour to give you, and you get what you can. But normally speaking, these things run 2 hours plus. And that was even on BTR, which is where we started out. And they have limitations themselves. Okay, we cut off right around 2 hours. And it's all AM radio to quality, which was great too. We had a lot of problems with BTR. But, went from that. Started 2 more podcasts later on, probably around the time that my co-host there from Ed Eye Level started. He had moved across country again. Now he's in Colorado and started running into a lot of problems just in his life, I guess. And he started backing down a little bit. We're still doing Ed Eye Level. I was still doing Third Eye, but I was like, let me just bring some more on here. And I had connected with 2 other people. One who's a guy who's involved with the Chiller Show, a big convention in this area, horror, cult cinema, cult television. And we had met and become friends. We're hanging out at each other's houses and drinking and whatever. And I was like, you know what? Do you want to do a film-only show? It won't be like Third Eye because we're not going to bring somebody on. But we'll just, shoot the shit about films and genres and whatever else. And that turned into something we got. I think Ed Eye Level was around close to 200 episodes when we folded.
Damn.
Third Eye is very close to 100 episodes at this point. And it's still sort of going. It's been on and off in the last couple of years, but very recently we did like 2 of them in January. And Weird Scenes has been 78 episodes, I believe. So, and that's still definitely ongoing. And there's another one that was more. You said your podcast was about spirituality. It was about alternative spirituality, and that only ran about 10 episodes because it didn't go where I thought it was going to go. I had another partner. There's a friend of mine from back when, and we were having a lot of chats offline. And I got the impression she was somewhere where she wasn't quite. There's more she had an interest in than she knew. And so we started talking about some stuff. I was like, she's kind of out of her depth. I don't want to say too much. All right, let's cut this one off for tonight. And it became that kind of situation. I'm like, all right, let's just drop this one. So I don't even talk about it too much anymore, but it does exist. And those who dig around will find this podcast. It is mentioned obliquely in all my write-ups for Third Eye and Weird Scenes and wherever else.
You may find like the redheaded stepchild. It's just there. Like
when you find like a linked period or something in a sentence, try it out. That you may find something interesting. But
so I got a question, Gene. I got a question. Why did you pick the name Third Eye Cinema? Like, what was it about that?
A lot of reasons. Well, the basic one was just how do we put this? Again, it has to do with spirituality, kind of like you're thinking. And first off, it was based on cinema and weird cinema at that. Psychotronic cinema, grindhouse cinema. It's been called by a lot of things. Yeah, a lot of directors we had on were, quote, sexploitation, especially the ones from the 60s. But, and you have to pardon me, people, my voice is, I got some allergies today. This isn't my usual voice. But, it was more about where I am coming from and seeing things. Again, I see things from a different perspective than most people. Yeah. I find that people, especially nowadays, there's an almost Rain Man sort of borderline autistic concentration on facts and details and missing the forest for the trees. They'll know every piece of, this bark on this particular birch tree is different from this one over here on this whatever tree. I don't really give a shit, honestly. Yeah. I'm seeing the whole forest all the time. I'm seeing what's outside the forest. I'm seeing the big picture. Here's how I'm relating things. I'm making connections. There used to be a show on PBS called Connections. I forget who did it. And he would make these grandiose things that you would never really consider linked together, and yet they did. Historical facts, scientific facts, whatever. And I've always kind of been there. I've always been the one making these, what other people tell me seem profound a lot of times. Sometimes they tell me I think I'm crazy. But connections that other people aren't necessarily seeing or talking about. And so basically I'm coming at it from somewhere where most people are not. And so I was like, well, you know what? I've been told by some people that, again, this is kind of funny to me, but I was told that, oh, yeah, you're a very enlightened individual. I'm like, well, actually, I'm kind of selfish. But you're enlightened. You're what do you call it? Selfishly enlightened or something. I forget what the exact terminology she used.
I mean, technically, you could be enlightened and be selfish.
Yeah. I mean, self-interest is what that way.
Yeah.
I
Sorry,
tend to
sorry.
be a selfish, enlightened person myself. That's why when you mentioned third, I'm like, oh, okay, I understand where you're coming from. I
Yeah, that's it.
understand
So I was
seeing
like,
the bigger picture, not just the forest, but the sky, the grass, the animals in the forest. Like I tend to see things, and when I say things, sometimes or it may not be so profound for me for what picked up, but a lot of people they don't catch it. So
yeah.
it's like I definitely understand where you come from, and I like the name Third Eye Cinema. So I'm like, oh wow, this
Well,
definitely
especially
got.
because there's a dual thing there. One is, okay, yes, it was originally all about cinema and weird cinema. But the other one is, well, it's the cinema inside your head. When you're going through, when you're seeing things with the ajna open, you're seeing something very different than everybody else is seeing. You're looking at the same thing, you're seeing the same outlines, but it's like looking at an MRI versus looking at an X-ray versus looking at Kirlian photography versus whatever. You are getting the same picture that looks very, very different, and you're getting very, very different perspectives and seeing things that you don't using any of those other imaging techniques. So that's kind of where that came from. The short answer, believe it or not.
I was about to say, yeah, that's a short answer. All right.
I warned you I was look away. It's just my wife talks about this on weird scenes, and she's like, you two, you're like the old ladies. You just sit there and chat, 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 and talking about nothing for like an hour. And this is before the show starts, so we always have bonus content before or after.
Right. I was about to say you just got to have like a whole fucking highlight reel of your like not even prep work, but just casual conversations, and that'll
That's
probably be a
it.
whole other fucking
We
50 hours
started
of
doing it.
content.
We started doing it.
Yes, that's great. It's funny how like cinema is like such a theme nowadays. Like it's funny like the way I started doing podcasts. Shout out to Beer Break. I'm a co-founder on that podcast as well, and it originally started with me, my friend Carlos, and my friend Albie, and basically like I don't know why. I think we got drunk one day and like we were just talking about bullshit with movies because I mean, mind you, we all work at Alamo Draft House at the time, and we were
Right.
just all like, "Bro, we should talk about movies drunk and record it," and we're just like, and
That's
and
what we
and,
do.
and like, yeah, and that's literally what it ended up being. So we got a couple episodes on YouTube. They're actually not on any other platform. I'm actually trying to get them on other platforms because it's pretty hilarious. But it is definitely like a visual show because, like, I guess the whole premise of the thing was like, we had several topics because we talked about pop culture, video games, and movies, and a lot of what we talked about was mostly argumentative
Hmm.
stuff like we are talking about like the best franchise or what we think is the best action movie or some bullshit like that. And there's a point where like you could just tell like obviously who drinks more than the other, and it's just and because like Beer Break, obviously with the name being Beer Break, in between segments we would either take a shotgun a beer on camera, or like and like we'd all do it as a group. So like consistently you just see us get more inebriated as we keep going. And it's honestly probably still one of my favorite things to do. Those guys are great. Obviously, the reason it's not as active anymore is because I moved. I'm actually in San Antonio when everyone used to reside in Laredo, and
Right.
but it was probably the funnest fucking time as far as like sitting down. Those episodes were long too. Like if you go back on them, I think minimally it was probably like an hour and a half, hour 15. Because like
Yeah.
we also like took the time to review every season 8 Game of Thrones episode, and that's probably the one where we weren't drinking as much, but like we would watch the show drink like while we were drinking, and then went to someone's house and recorded our review of it or our theories and like what's coming up kind of thing. I think we
If you
kind of all ended up disappointed, but at the end of the day, we still love this show, right? But that's probably something I'll share soon. As
If
far
you
as
head over to the Weird Scenes Facebook page, I think it is, or maybe it's I think it's Facebook page, not the WordPress page. And what you will see there, and I can give you the links later. What you'll see there is the first pinned post is a bottle of it was a martini, I think, and the other one is a glass of red wine. And it's basically it's talking about us because that's how we do the shows. The two of us, this is how we used to get together anyway. But basically, he makes these killer vodka martinis, and I'm a big red wine drinker, so I'm actually drinking some right now. And basically, that's what we do, just to kind of loosen up and relax. And it's funny because earlier on, okay, yes, we do have moments where we certainly agree about movies, but we had a lot of butting heads. It ends up being like a Siskel and Ebert kind of thing. And earlier on, I used to edit a little bit more to, because when you get to edit the chance to edit a show, when you're not doing it live like we did early on, all that BTR stuff was live. Um, you can kind of clean up the language a little bit, not in terms of cursing, we don't care about that, but people stammering or searching for a thought or whatever. Get rid of that junk, the ums, the ahs, and sometimes you can hear. I mean, somebody can hear me getting drunk, but you can hear him really getting loaded as you get further into the podcast. We're talking about 2 hours, 2.5 hours for most of these things. And by the end, he starts kind of slurring and looking for, like, repeating the same word over and over again, different ways, trying to find it. And I was like, I really shouldn't cut this out because it's funny. It's endearing, but it's funny. And I was like, okay, it kind of states who we are. So I started leaving some of those in, especially in more recent episodes. You may well pick that up just for a laugh.
I feel that. I totally feel that. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. I remember our first episode was probably the worst as far as like inebriation. It's probably the best as far as like getting someone, like you could see everyone physically getting angry throughout that entire episode, and it's really funny. Kenneth, so I know your show for the most part is you, and I know your wife is featured sometimes. Am I correct on that?
Yeah. Every so often.
So I mean, obviously our podcasts are obviously pretty different because we're over here getting drunk and you're over here trying to give good motivation and leadership and spirituality and stuff.
Yeah, so I'm just like the black sheep over here, but I kind of I like what y'all doing because one of my favorite podcasts is actually called Drink Champs. And this is what they do is they drink and they smoke weed and they talk about music. They have different artists on it. So like I'm comfortable like just being able to have this conversation, even though I don't participate in it, but I do smoke and do my podcast. Like that's definitely a big part of like my creativeness.
Yeah.
I bet. So how do you plan y'all's episodes? I mean, and I'll start with Kenneth because I feel like that one requires the most context because it seems difficult. You know what I mean? Because like honestly, sometimes I come on the show with my guests and I feed off of you guys, which is great, and it's honestly easy. I just come up with some really foundational questions and then we go into our tangent. But like I feel like your podcast is way harder by design, just because like what you're trying to do as far as explaining your journey while also trying to motivate and inspire, which is, I think, probably one of the hardest things to do as a teacher. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so. And it's crazy. I think about that a lot because I realize I don't do it in a orthodox way. Whereas I come up with content, it usually be a thought that come up in my head, or when I'm meditating out, something will come up in my head that I should talk about, or just my experience through life, what I see on social media, or like you said, it's kind of hard when there's not a lot going on in your life, but you still got to come up with content. And for me, I've always had a gift to just speak about something. Like it's just come natural. So I don't really plan it, and when I do plan it, that's when my best content come out. When I like actually put the notes down, and when I like just think about what I'm going to talk about. But usually it's just like, well, I know I got to make an episode with it, so what I'm going to talk about. So, but usually something comes always.
So how much experience do you have, like, as far as your background with, like, because obviously we don't all know your background at this point, because I've heard a couple episodes of your podcast, haven't caught up to the recent ones. Okay. But what did you feel like you did in your past that is reflecting now, and obviously what you're kind of, I guess, radiating with your fans at this point about like what you're doing?
Well, like for those who don't know my past, like I come from Gary, Indiana. I don't know if many people know where that is, but Michael Jackson's is from there. So, and it's a very urban community. Urban community is not a lot of different races there. Of course, I'm black, so and it's basically the hood. So, just coming from there, and then experiencing life through the military. Then me moving to Las Vegas and then just having different experiences. Like I've been through a whole lot. Like and that's why I try to be as transparent as I can on my podcast, because I want people to know what I went through and to see that if I can make it, then anybody else can make it. Because I went through the worst. I went through not having my mom or father in my life. I went through just people not being there for me as far as family and friends. Like I've been through so much, and I've realized what I went through. It wasn't for me to go through. It's for other people who get stuck. Like if they was molested as a child and they still hold on to that pain. Like the same thing happened to me, but it wasn't a man who did it, but it was a woman. So I can still comfort them and let them know like it's not the end of the world of what you went through. So basically, is what I try to do is like just give people the motivation that I never had growing up. Like I didn't have role models or a father to look up to. I had my big brother, but he's only a year older. But like I didn't have those to tell me which was the right way to go. That's why I went into the military because I was following behind my brother. He went into the Navy. I decided to go to the Marines, and that from that point on, that built me to it added to me, like it added more discipline. It added that I'm able to handle situations like the coronavirus. Like I'm able to handle that a lot easier than someone who's never been through certain situations. So uh yeah, I forgot what the question was because I usually, this is how I do. I'll start rambling, I'll start talking, then I forget what the question was.
No, man. No. Basically, the question was like, what have you put into your past that you're showing now? Because obviously we don't. Not everyone obviously knows your background, but no, that's interesting, man. I mean, it's cool. Like, I think that's what's cool about this episode. You know, to the fact that I brought obviously one that's pretty similar as far as like to my show, and then one that's kind of like off the wall. Because like,
Yeah,
you know, as we talk about like the next discussions that come up, it's just really talking about perspective and growth and like like what we see as different people and individuals and what we used to see, you know what I mean? And I think it's interesting, you know, like obviously listening to your podcast more because obviously like I would play, I was actually playing it while this whole corona thing was happening at work, and and it was cool, you know. It was definitely cool to hear someone's journey. That's why I started from the very beginning and kind of hear where you're going, because I'm a big fan of Gary Vee at the moment. I don't know if you're aware of
yeah,
him.
Gary Vee.
Yeah, and he is like part of the reason I started this specific podcast, because I just kind of, you know, as much as I love Beer Break, I really wanted to do something kind of different in my own, and it involves like a community of promotion, and it's about like, you know, my last three episodes. The first one was just like an intro of like, hey, I love Final Fantasy VII. I'm a fucking nerd. And the next two was really talking about like my love for music with two local artists. And, you know, we sit down and we talk about processes, how this was made, like where we came from. And that's the kind of shit that I guess I find the biggest win right now for me. Cause it's just like, you know, I'm here. It's like I'm having a beer and you're right next to me right now.
Yeah.
And it's fucking cool. You know what I mean? It's cool that we could have conversations to where like, hey, this is where I come from. This is what I do. And, you know, we're just here to kind of like share the love of what we do. And I think passion is like the biggest driver to, you know, promotion. You know, if people know you're passionate about something, like it's just gonna go far. And again, it's fucking cool to work alongside you guys. So I definitely appreciate y'all being on the show and really talking about, you know, this elaborate way of us doing things. Well, what seems elaborate, but it's really just us fucking doing what we do and loving it. You know what I mean? So it's pretty great. So what about you, Gene? Like,
Well, in terms of the same question, I would say that what he was saying, I can go with at our level the most because Matt and I went to school together, and Matt had money at the time, which we didn't really get unless you went over his house, and he had like servant stairs and all this crap. Which, you know, being me, I always made a point of going those. Like, oh, you don't have to go up there for the nursing staff for hello it is. I'm like, yeah, okay. So I'd always make a point to go up the servant stairs. Like, screw you. But he was a good guy. But then he wound up, his father got slammed by, of all people, Donald Trump back when, and kind of got left holding the bag. And I don't know if that was the direct impetus, but he wound up losing all the money that they had, basically, and they had to really super downsize, and his life was a little. There's a lot of things that happened after that. Plus, he had issues within his family. He wound up being the black sheep. Me personally, I lost my father when I was pretty young. Not super young. I don't consider it young, but a lot of people do because I was about 20 when he passed. And it was kind of a prolonged cancer, which was not supposed to be. He did experimental medicines and things like that, and it was horrifying. It was like living with an Auschwitz victim, honestly. Just watching this man waste away. And he was a big guy. He was in construction. He was very muscular. He was kind of, honestly, I mean, even though he was married, I was with him, and all these women would be like checking him out and ignoring me. I'm like, hey, I'm here. But and then seeing him turn into this like skeleton and stuff was really freaking rough. And of course, we ran into some major financial difficulties after that. My mother's not a money manager, and my life really went down the toilet in a lot of ways. Plus, he was not the only one that was the black sheep of the family. I kind of always was outside the nuclear family. So there was really no support. You talk about having no support from anybody. My mother's got some issues of her own. I don't even want to get into that. So for most of my life, certainly since my father passed, I really had nobody to fall back on. I was kind of a latchkey kid myself anyway, so it was okay. But, I see things differently again than most people do. I don't have that Hallmark crowd kind of like, ooh, look, it's Thanksgiving, get together with family. People always ask, what do you do for Thanksgiving? I'm like, well, that's me and my wife and the cats. It's been that way for decades. And before that, it was just me sitting home. I didn't make freaking turkey. Who cares? I didn't celebrate holidays. And I've been a goth, and I still am a goth. I consider myself that at heart. I've been a punk rocker, and I've been a thrasher, metalhead, death metal guy. And there's a reason for that. You don't necessarily gravitate to forms of music like that and lifestyles like that unless you've got some kind of damage going on somewhere inside you. It doesn't have to be external, it doesn't have to be dramatic, but you have to see the world differently than other people do, and don't think it's this lovely little safe, white bread, milk toast, like these use that word privilege these days, privilege paradise. You really see it kind of how it is. And, I've been down and out, I've been disowned, I had all kinds of shit go down. So I've learned a long time ago what, honestly, I see a lot in Joss Whedon's work, of all people, which is this theme that you make your own family. Family is not who you're born into. If you're lucky enough to have ones that really care for you and vice versa, God bless you. But most of us don't, or at least a good portion of us don't, and certainly people that I talk to don't. And you make your own. You find your own group of misfits, if you will, and that's it. That becomes your family, whoever they are. Some people drop off, some people get weird, some people whatever. But who you've got with you, those people that got your back, that's your family. And so, in respect to what you were saying, yeah, trust me, I totally get it. And I still feel that way. I mean, that's kind of how I met my wife. I didn't want somebody that was, being like that. I wasn't going to marry the girl next door that was all happy with the extended family and let's have a big bar mitzvah or a barbecue or whatever the hell. Like, no, I want somebody that's gets it at least. And thankfully, I was able to find that. So, I don't think we're damaged cases like I've seen some pieces be damaged cases in some girls that I've dated, but nonetheless, we're definitely on the outside of the American dream, if such a thing even exists. Sorry about that. It's my phone. Godzilla roars.
That's pretty cool. I actually love that. As far as like the Godzilla roar, not other stuff in a way, right?
So I assume that answers your question. That's where you seem to be going with it. But you tell me if I missed something.
No. I mean, it makes sense, man. I mean, I think like what's cool about like perspective and like what we're trying to put into our shows, it's like that's what kind of defines not necessarily the tone, but it defines like our content. It kind of shows like what we bleed into, what we enjoy, and it shows like who we are. And I think that's interesting because I firmly believe like what you said as far as like family is who you make it, because like mind you, like I love my family. I think we've had our bumps on the roads, and I think at this point like I have family and friends. I have family as in family, and it was when it started. But like, obviously with a little work and a little bit of communication,
right.
That's what ended up working out for me. And I think that's what's great about like, again, seeing different perspectives, because like obviously we have different spectrums here where some ideas are more extremist than others, and that's good to see like how you're seeing it, because now it's just like it's just true, because like at the end of the day your perspective is reality, and that's just what it is. So I think that's dope. I mean, at the end of the day, like it makes a whole lot of sense to me. What do you call it? What would you guys say at this point like has been biggest wins coming from your podcast?
I'll say for my biggest wins, would be have the guests that I've interviewed. Like I had a former NBA player. I've had business owners that I just talked to. Just my couple days ago on my birthday, I did an episode with a accomplished comedian slash magician. So that would be one of my biggest like wins, and also just the people that I've impacted, the people that talked to me and told me that the words that I said made a big impact. So uh it won't be the money, it won't ever be the money for me, even though money is like, I do want to be like a more wealthy and set, but my biggest wins come from those that I've helped, and just the people that I've talked to.
Yeah, fuck yeah, man. Totally agree with that. That's dope. I know I saw that episode. It was Eric Thompson, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I saw that name, I thought it was that other motivational speaker from, I think, Fearless
ET.
Motivation.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I was just like, dude, you got to talk to him. I was all excited, and I was like, nah, I'll play it later. But either way, I'm still interested to hear more of that for sure. What about you, Gene?
In terms of biggest wins, well, it certainly ain't money. uh, but I would say I got to interview people that I never thought I would, which is part of the impetus of this originally. Even before I met Matt, my wife was talking about me and trying to push me to do a book or something because I was so into all these movies and things. I was like, it'd be great if I could interview, whoever, somebody stupid, Jeffrey Combs or something, with the Reanimator films and From Beyond and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Or, going deeper, people like, who knows, Fred the Hammer Williamson or something. And what ended up happening was when I did the podcast, okay, yeah, not all those people, obviously I didn't do either of those two, but I ended up speaking to a lot of people. And first it was, interesting odd directors that did stuff back in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and stars. I mean, I talked to Cynthia Rothrock, who I used to have a big thing for back in the days of kickboxing films on HBO or whatever the hell. Uh, and then later I started talking to people that were huge in the metal scene. Like I talked to Michael Kiske from Halloween and Udo Dirkschneider from Accept. And then I started talking to people that, first it was like my drummer's big crush, Love Leone from Chastain. And then I started talking to people that I had a crush on, like Dural Pesh from Warlock. And so I started getting bigger and bigger names. I got people out of the woodwork that other people couldn't get at the time. Now she's showing up everywhere. But at the time when I interviewed her, I got Roberta Finley, who was silent for decades and was notorious that, she would not talk to people. And I managed to get her trust and get her on air. And she delivered a fantastic, funny, career-spanning interview. It's actually one of my favorites. And, at the time, everybody was like, wow, how'd you get that? My interview with Mike Rainey from Something Weird, people still reference this in books and things because there aren't many interviews out there with Mike. And he had this expansive knowledge of, 60s odd films, exploitation, drive-in, whatever. There was a lot of that kind of stuff going on. But honestly, it's just having all this stuff in the bag. I mean, there are so many episodes here, so many riches of. If I actually wanted to sit there and try to transcribe these damn things, which is not something I would care to do,
I was like, that sounds painful.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely publish several books, several volumes from all this stuff, just the materials that went down, the interviews that happened, the discussions that happened. Um, and there's been a lot of stuff like that. So having all this in the bag, having people tell me, like on previous jobs and things, day jobs, like, I don't know how you do all this stuff. This is amazing. You're an amazing individual for being able to do all this crap. And, it's so, I don't know. I hate to say profound, but I've gotten that kind of thing from people where it's like, yeah, this is really heavy. It's not the usual, like, chatty, like, little interview kind of stuff. I was like, well, yeah, do some research. I know these things. I grew up with them, whatever. It's not, I don't want to say CNN, but, it's not PBS level, but it's damn close. I mean, especially for podcasting. I certainly do get them to admit a lot of stuff. I get them get out some of the little salacious rumors and stories or whatever, disprove them, debunk them, or prove them true. But I also concentrate on the reality of the situation. Okay, when did this happen? Why did this happen? Who'd you work with here? Whatever else. and we get some really good stuff out of them. So yeah, I mean, and especially having done the 4 different podcasts, which are very different in perspective. The one being almost along the lines of what Kenneth is doing here, which was at our level, because that podcast was strange. It was really, I told you, it was just kind of loose and free form, but it was really kind of about trying to get people through the daily headlines and say, okay, look, this is all crap. Now what do we do about it? And trying to motivate people. It was in the beginning. There was a lot of motivation. One of the biggest episodes we got, thousands of downloads, it's crazy, was one where we were talking about SOV, and I was like, basically the point of it was go out there and make your own. This is the technology's in your hands. All you need is the motivation and the will. Get out there and do it. Do something better. Just don't copy me or copy this guy over here. Do something better. Make your own. Make your statement. And I guess that resonated with people.
Episode, like what you're saying now, I mentioned that in my last episode. Not to cut you off, but I tell people, it's like it's okay to have a favorite, have a role model, but you need to find out what it is that you can do. You need to find out what your gifts, because you can't be following him because he on his own journey. Like that person is on their own journey. So we can't just all be followers. It has to be some leaders, and that's what my podcast is definitely about. Is like, because I have a brother. My older brother has almost 8 million YouTube subscribers. I should be in other people's eyes. I should be following in his footsteps, but that wouldn't fulfill me. That's not what I came here to do. And me taking the podcast route, like, it's harder if on the outside looking in, but this is what I was made to do, and that's why I'm able to have conversations with like NBA players who, like you said, I've never thought I would have a conversation with somebody who played in the NBA, especially me. I have no connections with anybody famous besides my brother, but yeah, and I've talked to people in Hollywood. I have a good friend, Cassandra Gava, and she played in
I remember her.
Yeah,
she was in Conan.
Yeah, exactly. Like I met her just by starting my podcast and then just venturing out to have conversations with people. And you would expect, I'm only 30 years old. She's 60. So like I've managed to accomplish a lot of things that a lot of people haven't done. And it's just because I was being authentic to myself.
Mm-hmm. And that's really what it's all about, existential authenticity. I've preached that to people for decades. And I don't know if people even know what that means, especially nowadays. People are very... it's kind of like our lovely president right now, where he's just like, it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. Hang on a second. Where does the buck stop? I hate to quote Harry Truman here, but you gotta, there was sometimes you get into situations in life and you might make a misstep, be okay, well, own up to it. It's okay. And it's like, oh, well, sometimes those people will expect you to bend over backwards and be contrite about it. And you don't feel the need to be. So, I've been there and I don't. And I've had people actually say to me, I'm impressed and appreciate the fact that you owned up to, doing X, Y, or Z, but I can't believe you just don't feel any remorse about it. I'm like, well, why should I? There's no reason to. I'm being true to myself. I didn't hurt anybody. It's just that's what I am, what I believe. I did it. If you think there's some kind of horrible, repercussions for the fact that I did it, all right. But I did it. I own up to it, and whatever. So be it. And people aren't like that now. I don't know what happened. Everybody just kind of wants to not take responsibility for anything they do or say, which is probably why we have this problem with the coronavirus right now, because nobody's staying the hell home and doing what they should be doing. They're just out there messing around in public all the time. So,
I mean, as far as like a business operator, I guess is what I'll say to that. Yeah, man, no, I 100% agree with that. I think more than anything, like as we continue this lifespan of the lack of accountability is exactly the problem. I think the fact that there's no ownership and accountability in, a lot of things that we do is the problem. And also just having the people to direct us. Like, I think it's such a big deal that people don't understand that, like, as, me being a general manager is that I lead and I teach. Like I wouldn't say I'm a teacher, because mind you, what teachers do is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Like it will always be difficult, and I will always have the utmost respect for them. But it's definitely something where we always direct people the right way, just like a teacher would. Obviously, you can't spell this word. I'm going to show you eventually how you spell this word. You know what I mean? And it's just that, like, if we could take the amount of accountability that teachers have and put it in real life circumstances of running a business, man, everyone would be as efficient as possible. And I think, like, I just think it's something that like is so necessary. And you're 100% right. Like I think at this point too, like, you were just saying like how Corona, like there's a bunch of, what is it, Generation Z out partying right now. And it's like, dude, like that's something that's ridiculous, because like they're already telling us what we need to do to just contain this whole situation and not prolong it. Because mind you, I think right now we're the top like growing as far as like the virus in itself. Like I think we've been growing 178% like every day, which is ridiculous. Just people don't keep going out, and it's just, come on, man. It's like I told my wife, and it's like I told a lot of my friends, because a lot of them were like, well, if I'm locked down, I'm gonna go out of town. I'm like, no, stay here. Like, stay at home. I'm sorry if you're bored, but read a book, write some music, make a podcast. I don't care. Just stay at home, stay where it's been you the whole time, and that's it.
The governor up here actually came on air a couple of days ago, and when he did the clampdown, like, okay, he put a curfew on, he's closing down all his businesses and whatever else, he literally said, the reason I am doing this is because I saw video footage on YouTube last night and whatever else of these kids, and I hate to blame it all on millennials, but it's kind of the younger generation that's mostly I'm seeing, running out the bars, sharing bottles. I mean, just like up against each other. I mean,
I'm a millennial, but I know some of us are doing that. So,
well, no, this is his words. It's like, I don't want to blame it on millennials, but that's what I'm seeing. This is the videos I'm seeing, and there's a disease being spread around. We're trying to stop community spread. That's what that is. How dumb are you guys?
I seen the video the other day where it's 20 kids with one sucker, and they all like taking a lick of the sucker. I'm like, wow, like this is going to be the end of our demand.
And like that's the part that I find ridiculous. It's like, wash your hands, immediately does the complete opposite. Like, it's like, God damn it, guys, like, why? I don't know, man. Like I kind of want to piggyback off of what Kenneth was saying earlier, as far as like finding your own. I mean, I think another thing, like the problem with social media, and as far as the problem with like our mindsets, is there's a huge thing about comparing people. Like, there's a huge thing. Like if you're on social media, and like, just say I'm on social media right now, and I have a friend that just made partner at a law firm, and they're getting engaged, they're buying a house, they're doing all this cool bullshit. And here I am like, fuck, I wish that was me. I wish I was successful. And I think that's bullshit. Like one, obviously that person created their own path. They obviously did everything they did to get there, but you cannot compare your successes to whatever they did. Like, you
can't compare to no one else, no matter how long you know that person, no matter what. You have to focus on you, because a lot of people don't believe in like reincarnation or like past lives, but a lot of what we go through today is because of what happened in our past. We still like doing the same thing over and over. We got the same cycles, and we're not consciously aware of, like, we just running a rat race. So a lot of us is like, well, I can't say us, because I've taken the time to like get myself together. So, and I'm pretty sure you guys did too. Like, just having a conversation on this type of level, a lot of people can't have this conversation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's true. Like I think growing, my pivotal moment, I would say, honestly, probably happened, I would say probably a year ago, where I was just like, dude, I'm tired of thinking like I'm not successful because I'm not this person, or I'm not this person. I'll have this X amount of money. I don't have this car, or I don't have a home yet, or I didn't finish school. And I think that's such the big like negative connotation about social media, because as much as like it's cool to share like what's going on, like what I love about it is like I get to keep up with anyone. At this point moving forward, I'm going to keep up with y'all now, because I get to know what you're doing, what shows you got going on. And I think that's the great part about it. But again, the minute and anytime I started thinking like, man, I should be doing what Kenneth is doing right now, because his podcast is more popular and like XXX. And it's just like, dude, like, no, dude, just take it chill. Like, I'm here to just do it for me, and I'm not doing it for anyone else. I don't care about what this person's hit the standard. Any of that shit. Like, I think it's something that, like, as far as comparing yourself to another, everyone's got to stop. Like,
Yeah,
at the end of the day, you're special, and you're here doing shit, and you're alive, and that's what matters. You know what I mean?
one of the major problems with social media, it's great for the reasons you're describing and more. Keep in contact with people across the country. You can keep in contact with people that you never dreamed you'd be talking to. Your idols, if you will. Not that I think you should have them. You should kill your idols, but that's another story.
Yeah.
Speaking metaphorically, using the Sonic Youth term. But the problem is that everybody seems to humble brag, and they tend to present themselves as if their lives are so great, maybe trying to make themselves feel better, maybe trying to keep up with other people. I don't know, but a lot of it is bullshit. It's image, it's propaganda, if you will, on a low level. And the most important thing out there,
you're not wrong. Like I think that's very possible too, because people could be living a fake life, or it's kind of like the psychological part of posting about your significant other, and how psychologists say it's actually your relationship's more healthy when you don't post about it.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
It's like they used to laugh about, like, oh, you guys talking about sex a lot. I guess you aren't getting any. It's that reverse, whatever you call it, inverse proportion there. But the most important thing to keep in mind with all this kind of stuff is the old Native American motto, which we used to say all the time at our level, which was, never judge a man until you walk the mile in his moccasins, which means you really can't tell what the hell somebody else is going through, for good or for bad. If you're comparing yourselves to them, like, oh yeah, I really wish I had, as beautiful a wife as this guy, right? I wish I had his house. I wish I had his life. I wish I had his money. I wish he had whatever, or his looks. God knows, whatever you're looking at. But you don't know what they had to sacrifice to get there. You don't know what you have that they are jealous of. Even somebody that's like a schmuck. There are people, it's a joke about like trading places or something like that. But the movie I'm talking about, people.
No,
that
I got that. Don't worry.
You would. You're right. People that are in high places that would just love to get out of the spotlight. You see it a lot with Hollywood. They want to get out of the limelight. They don't want the paparazzi. They don't want to be followed around. They'd love to date somebody that is not, quote, of their own crowd, and therefore just as fake or shallow or whatever. They want to just live a normal life. And you're sitting there go, oh God, I wish I was in Hollywood. I wish it was glamorous. It doesn't have to be on that level, but everybody is there. And a lot of times, you especially get people that are, tend to be more conservative, maybe older, whatever. They're like, oh, all these people, they're all degenerates, they're all whatever. Well, you don't know. Have you lived 5 minutes of their life? Do you know how they got there? Do you know what they're going through? Do you know what you think you are seeing is really what's happening? You don't. So I'm not saying, be totally like oblivious and like, oh yeah, everything's fine. It's all cool, dude. But, there's a level at which you really can't be walking around with the hammer of judgment in your hand, smacking everybody over the head because they don't live up to, or you don't live up to, vice versa, what they're doing. It doesn't work that way. It's not how it's supposed to be. You've got to find who you are in yourself, and I don't want to say love yourself, but find out who you are. That's what the existential authenticity. You got to discover who you are, who you're meant to be. And again, this is being used wrong, but your true will, if you will. Hint that to moving towards light people there. But you've got to discover where you're really going, where you should be going, what inside you is telling you should be doing. And then be true to that. Be true to yourself. Who is that? To thine own self be true. You can't live fake. You can't live somebody else's life. You can't live for somebody else. Even if it's somebody you love, you can't just totally throw yourselves in to please someone else or to make other people happy. You can't always be worried about what other people are thinking about what you are doing. And to the extent I'm even concerned about that because, I'm a social being. I'm an empath. I do pick up when people are like really, digging their eyes into me and put me the bird or whatever. And it bothers me because I'm human. But on the other hand, I'm just like, yeah, well, screw you too, and go on with what I'm doing. I've never stopped that. I don't think a lot of people get to that point, or it takes them a long time in life to get to the point where they can just let go and say, hey, whatever, buddy. I got.
What I hear a lot, not to cut you off again, but what I hear a lot, they say when you get to 40, then you'll start like not giving a fuck. I'm like, no, I'm only 30. Like I don't care now. Like I had
a long time before I get that.
Like
There's
what you're
20
saying
something.
now, I had to go through that. I'm like, I can't just go off about how other people think about me, what they say about me, because if I keep listening, then it's just gonna keep me down. It's gonna keep me thinking negative. So I just keep my head forward, and I like to say this is a marathon, or we all on a highway. You got your lane, I got my lane. You shouldn't tell me how I should be driving, and I shouldn't be looking at you because we can all crash. So,
That's the bottom line. And it ain't a race. That's the other part of that.
yep,
Yeah, that's
We're
true.
all driving,
all
but
got different destinations.
It's like, what's the fucking rush? You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like, why the fuck do I need to be a millionaire by 30? You know what I mean? Like what? How the fuck would I do that? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like on like a realistic basis, like what am I doing that's gonna make me a millionaire? Like I'm 26 in 4 years. Like
I'll tell you something else that's odd. Like I said, my father worked in construction, high level. He was more or less one of those. He used to hate when Norm Abrams called himself a master carpenter. He was kind of working with and double checking and correcting architects as well as building houses for the rich and famous, literally. He worked on Nixon's house. He worked on the Isley Brothers' house. He worked on the biggest wine importer in the East Coast house. He worked for the president of 20th Century Fox. I mean, this kind of stuff. So, one point he's doing one of these things, and he says, you can't look around at these people that are here. They've got all this money because I would go with him on summers and work, because it was decent money and because I got to see this other thing and work with my father and it was cool. Uh, you can't judge by the fact that these guys have a lot of toys and a lot of money and these beautiful estates and whatever the hell else. Watch them when they came around because they wouldn't be there during the day a lot of times. We're working on stuff, we're fixing a room, we're building an addition, and whatever. But these people are fucking miserable. I can tell you firsthand. I saw it every year for like, I don't know, maybe a decade. I did this stuff with them. Uh, these people that you would think would be the happiest guys and girls on earth because they've got it all. They're up at the top. They're in the echelons. And they were the most miserable fucks you've ever seen. I mean, I'm telling you, I've been with people that were dirt poor when I got this on that was kind of balls my ass. And I had people like literally handing me money to help me out, like church people that had no money themselves. Uh, those people on the bottom were so happy and so like, I'm blessed. Don't worry about it. I'm taken care of. God will take care of whatever. I'm like, okay, yeah, well, thanks. But and these people here that were supposedly at the top of the game were just sad. I mean, and they all, well, not all of them, but some of them had mistresses and whatever else. And you think, oh, look, this guy's living the high life. And they weren't. They really weren't. Angry people, sad people. Like, well, if money is really the answer to everything, okay, yeah, you can't get by without money in this world, unfortunately. But if that's the answer to everything, why the hell aren't these people happy? So that's not the answer. There is something to just finding your own, I don't want to say your own bliss, but finding your own road, finding what makes you happy, finding who you are, and pursuing that as opposed to pursuing what everybody else says you should be doing, whether that be, oh, you know what, you should be a lawyer because they make more money when you really want to be a poet.
Yeah.
Or pursuing the almighty dollar all the time. Sometimes that's great. Sometimes it'll get you somewhere. Sometimes it really just isn't the answer. So you gotta weigh the cost in a lot of ways. So
no,
And
I
that's
feel
kind of why.
that
Oh,
for
sorry
sure.
about that.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
And that's kind of why I said, yeah, when I said, what my biggest win from this, it won't be the money, and that's because, like you just said, like you seen people who had everything and it was
mhm.
miserable. Like even though I haven't got to that point, but I know that to be true. Like even though I've never had $1 million in the bank account, like I know that just on my journey is like just you got to find happiness in your journey. You got to find happiness no matter where you at in life. If you're trying to achieve something in life, as long as you pushing forward, as long as you're happy, and as long as you know that one day you're gonna get whatever it is that you desire, that's all that matters. And the money is gonna come. Like you don't have to worry about and just
I'm still waiting.
it's
Yeah,
gonna come. Like it's
I mean,
literally gonna come. It may not be today, tomorrow, but one day, like whatever you seek, it's gonna come.
yeah, no, I agree. I think taking off like the first two episodes from what I heard from Kenneth's podcast, like I think that's super true, man. Like one, the grind, you gotta love it. And two, it's just like, if you believe you're gonna do this, it's gonna happen. You just gotta fucking work towards it. I mean, I think that's the problem. Like a lot of people again want stuff to be super escalated and super like here, and they're not patient. And I think that's the problem with just our entire generation. It's just like, stop trying to be so fast about what we do. Like it's work, it's hard work. And mind you, as you described, like people, once they get to the top, like it's stressful. There's so much more to go on, and it's probably awful. Like, mind you, speaking to my experience, I wouldn't say it's awful, but I'll tell you what, I did not enjoy being the leader during this coronavirus. Like, you know what I mean? Like having to be that person to not necessarily everyone lean on, but like just to be that guy to make these kind of calls that obviously something that I don't fucking enjoy or something I don't believe in, but it's just one of those things where, I'm here to do the job. And it's not always fun. It definitely is not always fun. And, everything's on you. And I can only imagine being a huge exec like that, because fuck that. If it's like 20% of what I'm dealing with now, like I probably don't ever want to get to that level in a certain extent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, because like I really enjoy what I do now. I love leading people. I love really, developing people and making them better. But like when it comes to shit hitting the fan, like it did, this last week, like fuck that. I will not relive this last week ever again.
But but also to that extent, see, that's or where you say you may like, you may not want to get to that point. But what if what you went through this week is to prepare you, like, oh well, I can handle it, like you made it through, like
that's
so.
True. You're not wrong, actually, in twisting that way. You're not wrong for sure.
Because when you said Gene, when you said that the money's not here yet, then it made me think, how did when you seen those celebrities, how did that affect you today? Like, how do you feel about successful people? Do you always have the mindset that they're miserable, or like what do you think about that?
Always? No, hell no. People are people. It's just I find that, and remember, the people that I'm talking to are famous. They aren't necessarily rich. I mean, you're not going to go to like, oh, let's go visit Udo Dirkschneider. He's going to be living in a big mansion. No, not really. He's a middle class at best German guy he's got 2 sons playing with him in the band. He's happy. He's well, as happy as he can be for an old curmudgeon. That kind of a thing. But is he going to be rolling in cash? No, hell no. He's out there touring all the time at 70 years old, and he's happy to be doing it. So it depends, again, how you measure success. Do I see everybody as you're going to get money, you can be miserable? No, but I've seen it enough times to know that it's not an end in itself worth pursuing. I mean, you do need to make money somehow, but it's not the be-all, end-all of life. And a lot of people live like that, especially if, like myself, when I was younger, you grew up and you had no freaking money. And there was like kind of this lower end kind of situation. And you're like, oh, geez, if only we had blankety blank. Well, are you going to be happy? I mean, when you first get it, like, oh, look, I got myself a sports car, and I got myself a nice new suit, and I got myself a trophy wife or whatever. But is that really enough for you? Yeah, and in the end, is the trophy wife really going to make you happy? This is your partner that you want to be with every day and share your experiences with? Or is it just somebody you want to show off at parties and try to make other people jealous? That's kind of, it's the way it out. So.
I definitely agree with that 100% sure, because most people, like you said, they chase fame. A lot of people don't chase money. They actually chase the fame, and realizing that fame is not what you really want it to be. Like having eyes on you 24/7 is not what you think it is. And like you said, those people, you can. But I was saying,
man.
My bad.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, but those, like you said, those people that's on that level, they hoping and wishing that they not famous no more. But in the end of the day, we all contradict ourselves. We all say we want something, and then say we don't, and then we all say we don't and we want. So, because sometimes I'd be like, yeah, I want the fame. Then sometimes I'd be like, fuck that. But then like one day I'll be like, yeah, I want it again. So like, it's all about you and what you want.
Well, again, that's kind of what I was alluding to, somewhat facetiously, because there's another level to that. But with the true will comment before, not what you think you want, but what you, the deeper spirit, the soul, the heart inside of the man, if you will, really wants, and where you really are. You don't find who you are just overnight. You don't even know who you are when you're born. You certainly don't know who you are when you're in the midst of, your teenage years and you're kind of trying to find your way around. And a lot of people don't even figure out until a midlife crisis or something. That's why they call it that. It's like all of a sudden you get talking heads once in a lifetime, and you're like, this is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. How did I get here? My God, what have I done? And that's what that's all about. It's not just about all of a sudden I'm old and I'm not gonna be able to get fancy girls anymore because I'm gonna be gray and dumpy or something, and I'm not gonna be at my peak earning power. No, it's about saying, oh my God, what the hell did I do with my life? This isn't what I was supposed to do. This isn't who I want to be. And what am I going to do about it? And you really don't want to wait until you get a midlife crisis to do
Yeah.
that. You want to figure that out like I did when you're in your 20s or something, or even earlier if you're savvy enough. Most people don't,
Yeah.
but that's kind of where it's at.
No, and that makes sense. I mean, I think at this point, like, it's one of those things where, like, I think the term "wake up" means so much bigger now than it does, in the
Yes.
past, because it's just not a thing as much. I feel like we're so trapped in our comfort zone that, like, everyone feels like that's the expectation to success.
Yep.
And it needs to be more broader and more elaborate, and people just don't understand that, like, one, do what you love. I'm always going to preach that. I
Yeah.
think currently with the company I'm with now, I left the company to try something different, and man, God, it was not necessarily awful, but it just wasn't for me. Like when I think about, like, can I see myself here 5, 10 years? No, I can't.
Yeah.
So obviously going back to the company now, it's just went straight to that. Does it involve, the most amount of money? No. But, like, honestly, I feel so successful in what I do because I lead, X amount of people every day on a daily basis to execute our mission. And that's just always been, I think for me, it's always been fulfilling. It's always been something nice to not necessarily compare anyone to, because it's different. Mind you, like, what I do is, I feel like, is really different outside, like, running a restaurant. But I sit here and I'm just kind of like, fuck, man, I'm gonna miss that, obviously, with this whole Corona shit. But also, like, again, looking on the positives, like, I'm very, like, I'm not gonna stay, very conservative and not expand other branches. Like, obviously, I'm gonna focus on this podcast. I'm gonna read some books. I'm gonna make some music. I'm gonna kind of just, look at time for me. And I think that's another thing that, like, is a huge problem nowadays. That people don't, they want the money, they want the fame, and they work towards that so much they almost forget who they are.
Yeah.
And that's something that people just got to take a step back from and be like, honestly, you'll probably be quicker to fame if you stay who you are and be passionate in what you do, versus just becoming this, corporate snob or really stressed out musician or whatever the fuck the case may be. Like, it's just isn't worth it.
Remember too that these times are different from what our parents and our grandparents and maybe even their parents went through.
Mhm.
In that you see it everywhere. It's all over the news media, magazine articles, whatever. That we are the first generation collectively, not just like of a certain age, that are not going to do better than our parents did for since like 100 years ago, and that says a lot. So if that's the case, all right, yeah, you need to pay the bills, but is this what you want to spend your life doing? Just drudging away when you're not even going to get an end result like your parents and your grandparents did?
Yeah.
You're not going to have a nice little house. You're not going to have nice property and a whole bunch of nice stuff. Then why are you doing it? Why don't you just, all right, find a way to make some cash, hopefully, but why don't you just go after the things that will, you think, make you happy? And hopefully that's not just, okay, I want a whole bunch of video games so I can sit around and play them. All right, well, people get distracted. I get distracted, whatever. But find the things that are going to make you happy, find things that are going to hopefully fulfill you, and chase after those just as much, if not more so. And then hopefully, you can become something. Like you mentioned, making music. I used to be in a band. The trick is that, it was a different time. It wasn't like nowadays where you could just get two guys, pull out Pro Tools or whatever the hell and do it all on your computer and put it on the internet. And there it is. It's physical release. That wasn't like that back then. You had to go through a lot of steps and be very lucky and find a lot of people and, go out and do like pay to play kind of stuff. And then you had A&R reps, and then you had to do hurdles with labels, sending out, recording an expensive demo, sending out demos to people, hoping that somebody picked them up, hoping that your contract wouldn't rip you off, all this kind of stuff that went down. So hundreds and thousands of bands. I mean, now there's certain labels that I deal with or that I know of that put out nothing but bands that didn't make it from the 80s and 90s where they never got past the demo. And some of these bands are great, but that's the way it was back then. Whereas nowadays, you don't have to worry about that so much. It's more of just
Yeah, there's
get your
no
stuff together.
restrictions.
Well, yeah, get your stuff together and just put it out there. And unfortunately, yeah, you lose a lot. You lose a lot of the experience. You lose a lot of the fortitude. You lose a lot of the development as a musician or as a businessman, if you will. Navigating your way through these hurdles that we used to have. But you also get that experience of having all this stuff out there to share and people to hear and appreciate at least. So why the hell not? Why don't you do it? There's not really as many hurdles holding you back as there used to be, and with less incentives to do anything else, that isn't something you want to do. Why bother? You might as well just do it. Do something for yourself. Do something that you think, if you have kids or if you have a girlfriend or if you have friends or if you just want to get it out there to the general public, somebody in Germany that you don't even freaking know will say, hey, that was good. And they'll appreciate it and keep it. And 10 years later, they'll be talking about it to their kids or something. This stuff happens. You can do it. So why not?
And that's what I'm doing the podcast. That's literally what my journey has been about. Is because what I found I love to do is talk, and what way to do it is through a podcast. And even though, like how you just mentioned, like the music scene in the '80s, like for me, it seems like I'm still taking that traditional route because when I don't just post my podcast, like I do all the editing and I make sure I network, I send it to everybody. I try to. That's why I'm on this podcast today, is because like I network and
Yeah.
that's how I met so many other people. It's just like, because I wasn't just the type to just put it out there and hope somebody listened. I'm like, no, I got a message. I message almost every single last one of my friends on Facebook. I message almost everybody, famous or not, on Instagram, just sending them links. And it's like I'm still taking that traditional route because I don't want it overnight. I don't want the success overnight, because if you get it overnight, you can lose it overnight.
Yeah. And
If
you
you
don't appreciate it either.
Exactly. Yep. So I had a question because you mentioned reading more books. So what are some of the books that you have read and that you would let somebody else know about? What's some of the greatest books that you have read?
Who are you talking to
So,
me?
Juan mentioned it. So
Go for one.
y'all
yeah,
both.
no. So I'm currently reading a couple. I feel like on and off, um, just because obviously work and podcasts and kind of a lot of stuff, and those are just honestly stupid excuses. That's why I'm glad that I'm able to do a reset and do this. But I have a couple that I'm working on. One of the first ones, and I would say honestly anyone should pick this book up, is Emotional Intelligence 2.0. Um, Obviously EQ is such a big deal, and I feel like that's not talked about enough amongst people, because everyone obviously knows IQ, but EQ is such a big deal on like an identifier of how you manage not necessarily people, but just how you are as a person and how you understand like conversations. And it almost gets to the point where you could almost become manipulative in a positive way to steer the conversation. And I think that's one book that I'm going to revisit again, because you could always work on your EQ
Yeah.
as far as that's concerned. And that's definitely one I'm definitely going to reread and basically kind of jot down more notes to improve on. I think overall, like, my EQ isn't terrible. I think I'm in around the 70s, 80s as far as my score. But I'm also reading what I call Mindset. Mindset's a good book, and I'm also listening to or reading the 360 Leader, which is kind of like being the guy who's the middleman
Yeah.
that kind of works his way up to kind of be that leader no matter what, even though you are the middleman and you're not necessarily the direct in command. Though my situation, obviously, like as being the general manager of a building, it doesn't necessarily pertain to that. But I think as far as working with a corporate team and understanding infrastructure and understanding roles, it's really helping me kind of guide myself through those rails and understand like, okay, this is how I could get someone to not necessarily work for me, but I become an influence to their decisions because I'm here giving them my ideas and they're understanding where I'm coming from. And those three books right now, I think, have been the best mindset for overall like year mindset and how you got to be determined and driven, because obviously in our generation, it's not feel as strong as it should be. The 360 leader really focuses on working around with people versus working through someone, which is obviously a better tactic. And then EQ is probably overall day-to-day life, like whether it's business or just at home. I think it's such a great book to just overall improve as a person. I feel like, I mean, at this point, like I think my mission's always been like improve myself so I can improve others.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of been my thing as far as like a business standpoint. As I stand as a general manager, like if I do move forward, that's my thing. Like I definitely want to improve others, consistently coach people and shit. So.
What about you, Gene? You read books a lot as well?
I read books constantly. The trick is that there's a huge divide between, if you will, my business life, if you want to call it that, day jobs, and that sort of thing, and my personal, like, authentic self. So therefore, most of what I read has to do with esoteric subjects, with things about cult cinema, with things about cult bands of various genres, about genres themselves, about and also had a lot of decadent literature. I'm a huge fan of Oisman. I'm a huge fan of Octave Mirbeau. I've actually been cited, and they actually contacted me a couple times for permission to use some of my stuff, reviews I'd done over a third eye for the was it the Journal de Octave Mirbeau, which they publish yearly over there in France. I read a lot of that sort of thing. I read a lot of pulpy fiction. I'm big on Lovecraft and Howard and, that sort of thing. But in terms of, and Sax Rohmer, believe it or not, I was a huge Sax Rohmer fan all my life. But in terms of anything that, like Juan is mentioning here, where it's more self-helpy or for, moving yourself forward, that's more just like things my wife brings home from the library. I'll take a look at them and say, okay, that's some nice points, and there you go, give it back and forget about it. I feel like a lot of those, not the ones you had mentioned, because I hadn't read those, Emotional Quotient and all that, but a lot of these things like, Tony Robbins, whoever the person is this week, Susan Powder or whatever, Tony Little, these kind of things, Zig Ziglar's another one. Oh God, Matt loved him.
I love him.
I read a lot of this stuff and I'm just like, yeah, okay. It almost seems like a PowerPoint presentation where you could kind of pull it down to bullet points, give a quick, seminar, like almost like a business meeting for an hour and a half, and then you're done. I'm like, well, how is this like a 465-page book? And why are there, shelves and shelves of them at your local, whatever, Barnes and Noble or Borders when they were still around or whatever?
Yeah.
I don't really get that. That always seemed kind of alien to me. It's like, well, okay, yeah, that's pretty basic, though. Shouldn't you just bullet point it out and there you go, we're done, move on? But I'm sure other people feel the same way about the stuff I read. So that's not really my area. So in terms of books that influence me in that respect, I honestly can't think of anything.
Oh, just reading books, period. Like it's all helpful at the end of the day, whether it's a self-help, whether it's because I dive in self-help books as well. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, The Secret. What else? It's a lot of books. Earl Nightingale's The Strangest Secret. But then I love Harry Potter books. And I love Rick Riordan. He's a creator of Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. It's a teen book. So Hunger Games, like I read all type of books, and like they all give me some type of knowledge, whether it's because I'm into the occult knowledge or metaphysics and esoteric. So, and a lot of those books, those teen kid books, it be having those messages in there. Like,
they're just kind of buried or not so buried.
I definitely make sure Zig Ziglar. I haven't read his books, but I've listened to his lectures. Like, I'm a big fan of those who do lectures.
Yeah, he's similar to Napoleon Hill, that sort of thing, Benny Hinn. Yeah, I noticed a lot of the books that you're naming actually cross over with what's happened with the Christian movement, where in the 80s they kind of switched over from being more centered on whatever Bible messages to being this think and grow rich, name it and claim it sort of a thing. Because I know they name check a lot of those people. Oh, Napoleon Hill, Zig Ziglar, Benny Hinn, whoever the hell else. So is that where you're coming from with that, or is it more just a secular, I discovered this and I want to improve my life sort of thing?
Yeah, just secular. I don't even do religion. Like I was a Christian, I did do church, but as I just grew older, is
Yeah.
I had questions that the church wasn't asking me. So I've always retained the knowledge of the church, but I've dabbed in, like I can't say I dabbed in, but I've read the Kabbalah, or I've read some Muslim books. Like I'm just somebody who searches for knowledge, and
Gotcha.
whatever's out there is like I just soak it up.
You're a seeker. Okay.
Yeah.
That's dope. Good shit, man. I mean, I don't know, but like the books I feel like I'm reading are definitely obviously more in line with business, and I think at this point I'm just gonna explore it more. I think not necessarily self-help, because a lot of it is business oriented, like Simon Sinek and Leaders
Right.
Eat Last, and kind of that stuff is really that realm.
Theory
And
Z, William Uchi. Or is that too old for you?
probably a little bit.
Mhm. My mother had that on her shelf. I'm like, she tried to get me to read it as a child. I'm like, this is gobbledygook.
Yeah, that shit, especially as a child, like I probably wouldn't be the best best messaging there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, but like I think that's what I'm grateful, at least for like what's coming up. I mean, obviously, like with less stressful work, there's more time for shit like this. So to have good conversations and all the stuff y'all are mentioning, I feel like I'm gonna implement at some point in my life. Like now that I have time, this is dealing with work all the time.
Yeah.
So it's pretty nice for sure.
Sure, I definitely love having these type of conversations. Even though I have it on my podcast, but usually, once you hear my podcast, you're gonna hear a lot of me compared to me having guests or my wife being on it. It's gonna be just a lot of me talking, and that's a hard thing as well. It's like when you don't have someone to talk to,
Exactly.
right, and you just coming up. I mean, talking to yourself. So, but I've always did that. Even as a child, I was the type to talk to myself. I had imaginary friends, like I was that kid. So,
When Matt, if you ever listen to it, it's actually on the iTunes feed with the other podcast. Just that one last episode for whatever reason. But if you ever listen to the last episode of Ed Eye Level, what happened was Matt had just called it quits. He just dropped off. And I was like, okay, well, I had another guy that was calling in from Scotland at the time. Let's do an episode, kind of tell everybody what happened here, tell them the whole story of the podcast and how it came about and stuff behind the scenes, and that he seems to have dropped off, and we'll see what happens going forward. Which of course was nothing. We still have a website up, which is that's a Facebook page, but that's basically just headline politics and jokes and stuff like that, kind of like we were doing on the show. But there is no more Ed Eye Level podcast. It just is out there on archives. And what happened was he was always damn, I lost it. Where did we start off with this?
that's how I be.
That was
Like that's
he had
how
told
I
me
be.
right then when he said he was dropping off because you were talking about doing solo. That's what he answered.
Yeah.
He says, "Well, you can always just keep this podcast up and do it yourself if you want to do that. I don't care. I don't have a problem with that." I was like, well, yeah, but if you listen to my other podcasts, okay, Third Eye is interviews. I have a guest every show. They kind of dominate the show. I lead them with questions. We have back and forth. I'll throw some anecdotes and I'll throw some jokes, whatever. But that's basically it. It's two people talking. And then the one that shall no longer be named was me and a female partner. And we went back and forth. And Weird Scenes is me and Lewis, and we go back and forth about movies and such. And we throw in other stuff too, contemporary. Whatever. I kind of refer to it as my dinner with Andre. If you ever saw that movie, it's like that sort of a thing that goes on there in the middle of all the movies. And you know, but every time the constant is I have a partner, I have a foil, I have somebody that will give equal back to me, so I am not running the floor the entire time. Because honestly, I don't know how anybody else feels, but that would bore the shit out of me. You hear how loquacious I get anyway, just in a group situation. So picture me just going blah 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 blah, blah by myself. And honestly, I don't think I have the motivation for that. I'm like, well, why would I bother doing this? Who cares? One episode and I'm done. So I always found I needed some sort of a co-host, not as a crutch, but as somebody to bounce things off. It's less like uh, Johnny Carson and what's his name back when Ed McMahon or the modern equivalent, than somebody that's actually like a co-host and will give back as good as they get. And that's kind of it makes life a lot easier. And it
Yeah,
also
I only imagine it does.
keeps you on your feet too.
I was gonna say, I mean, like I think every one of my shows I've had someone on, and it's just so easy. I feel like I'm also really good at like just carrying the conversation. Like if they happen to do like a short answer or like, hey, let's add on to this. Like I feel like that's where I think we thrive as like either hosts or co-hosts, where we're just kind of like, all right, let's move on. And
exactly
like,
right.
We kind of, that's why I think like the narrative as far as like Kenneth stuff is just interesting to me, because I don't even think I could pull that off. Like I feel like I'm gonna make a solo episode and I'm gonna message you, Kenneth, and be like, hey, dude, I think this sounds like shit. Take a look at it. And like, let me know what you think. So.
That's crazy though, because I just never looked at it that way. And when I look at every podcast besides Joe Rogan, but he has a guest every episode, it's like, yeah, nobody's doing podcasts by themselves, and I don't know why I decided to do that. Like, but it came natural to me. So, if it was hard, I mean, at first I wasn't even very consistent with it. Like, I took a break within like the like after the 14th episode of the first season, then I had a spiritual awakening basically. So that's why I took my break. And then when I came back, I've been consistent since then. So it was hard at first, but that's because I'm very what is the word? I don't stay on one thing too long. Like I'm always jumping around. I'm always just here and there with my mind. So this has been like the most consistent thing, and like it's been easy to me because it's probably because I haven't made it to the level that I want to make it to yet. And once I get there, then things will be a lot harder, and it'll be a lot harder for me. But as of now, like I'm just riding it, and until something comes, until I find a co-host or whatever, like it's just gonna be this.
It's fascinating. You said you had a spiritual awakening that stopped this podcast for a while, because the redheaded stepchild's podcast that I kind of alluded to a couple times, that's exactly what happened to me too. In addition to what I said, is there was a I'll change the word. We'll say spiritual retirement going on there. That said, okay, that's it. I'm stopping for now. I'm reassessing. I'm going back to the basics, and let's go from there. That was just kind of come from inside me, or that I was kind of directed to do in a way. And that's that's true. If you're doing that sort of a thing, you got to follow your muse, if you will. There's no point fighting it.
No, I agree. No, that's good shit.
And that's actually how I found myself, is by doing my podcast. Because before I started doing the podcast, I was the quiet kid. Like I was the one who didn't talk much, kept to myself. But I've always had the knowledge that I have. I've always been able to do it. It's just when I started, I'm like, oh, this is my gift, because I'll listen to my own podcast and then I'll learn from myself. So I'm like, oh, I should have been doing it, just giving myself advice about everything that I already have the answer to, that I just didn't know I had the answer. So yeah, I get a kick out of doing it by myself though.
No, I believe it, man. Like, again, like I can't see myself doing that shit. Like, as far as like, I don't know, I'm not that organized at all. Clearly, by this conversation.
That's the point. I'm not organized at all. Like I'm very disorganized. Like I'll drop episodes whenever I feel like. Like I don't have a set time to when I post a schedule.
I'm the same way. I mean, I've been out for like a week. I think I dropped like my first 2 episodes like within the first 3 days, and then one was like a week after, and now it's like a week and a half at this point. So it's kind of been interesting, but it's cool.
Definitely we started out all the podcasts weekly, and some of them stayed that way, like at eye level, with occasional breaks, like when he moved out west or whatever. I should say not west to me. He moved east to Colorado. But with the other ones, with Third Eye, if there was a break, it was for a while, until something else happened. Because I think we ran something like 40 or 50 episodes straight, pretty much every week. And then there might have been like a slight, okay, well, I didn't get anything recorded, or I didn't finish editing, or whatever the case may have been. But mostly it ran straight through. And after that, there was like these long breaks. I know certainly towards the end, I mean, now that we're pushing like 100 episodes or whatever over there, I had taken off for a couple of years. And then it was my second guest ever, and the first one that recorded with me called me out of the blue while we were doing some Christmas show on my job. And says, hey, what you been up to? It's been 6 or 7 years. Are you still doing the podcast? I'm like, well, yeah, I can. Like, oh, do you want to come down and we could catch up on where the business is going and how things have changed since then and whatever else? I'm like, okay, let's do it. So that was a temporary restart. I know occasionally somebody would come up that I just wanted to speak to, like, oh, this should be fun. And I would boot it up again. And then just recently, two things happened. There was a special. There's a fellow that was chasing me around for a couple of years, like, oh, we really need to do this. We really need to do this. So we did. And that became a special episode, which is kind of more like that redheaded stepchild than it is a Third Eye episode, but nonetheless, interesting show. And then right on the heels of that, I got the Duro Pesh opportunity. I'm like, oh man, I had Duro Pesh posters on my wall when I was a kid. I ran around with that T-shirt. I used to blast those albums. I got to get her. So you do have that, but even trying to do it weekly, or in the case of Weird Scenes here, again, we had a year of hiatus there. It's difficult. You can't really, and we've been doing it bi-weekly for the longest time, I think, too. You can't really stay on schedule unless you are super motivated and you have a lot of material ready to roll and you are really constant with, if you have a partner, if you have other people coming on, getting those things recorded, edited, and out there. It's difficult. So, if you're putting them out every single day, of course you're going to have breaks. I don't know how you're even doing that. You're going to last like a week. You burn yourself out.
All right. You start repeating yourself. I realized that's a couple of my breaks. I realized that I will start to repeat myself, not intentionally, but just the conversations will start repeating. So I'm like, okay, I need a break because I don't want to just be beating a dead horse with the same things that I'm saying.
Yep.
And then I also realized, though, when you repeat yourself, that's how people learn, though, like, because they keep hearing it repeated. So I'm like, well, maybe I'm doing the right thing, but it don't feel right for me to keep repeating myself.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I agree.
A lot of people talk about pod fade after 5 years. I'm like, well, we're still going, but you do see that. You see a lot of people will kind of pass out around that time. Even at our level, I think was 6 or 7 years worth before he gave up the ghost there, so to speak, the ghost of the show. But if you keep doing it every day, like they're trying to do it several times a week, I'm telling you, that's not a good idea. You'll want to back it down to maybe once a week, maybe twice a week. And then if you need a break, take a break and then just, okay, do I want to go back and do this? All right. Yeah, I think I do. Go for it. But, give yourself some time to breathe.
Oh, did I say I do it every day?
Oh, no, he did.
I
said that.
I do it. What? No, I didn't.
Really? I thought I could have sworn somebody said they did it every day.
No, that shit sounds hard, dude.
That's what I'm saying. That's crazy. Like,
I was about to be like as much as I want to sit here and talk for an hour and a half, sure. But
yeah. But I'm sorry, I could have sworn one of you guys said that.
If you think about it, though, we talk every single day. So if we just had a guided conversation, like, you could do it, but you'd definitely be repeating yourself a lot. Like,
burn yourself out so fast.
To those, like, because I watched a few YouTubers, what's their name, Red and Link, and they do a show every single day or Monday through Friday. I'm like, wow, like, that's so much, and they've been doing it for over 10 years. I'm like, yeah, I can't do it. Joe Rogan even, like, he posts weekly, so I'm like, yeah, I mean, kudos to them guys, but I just don't have it in me.
Yeah, it just sounds like a lot. I mean, like, at this point, like I said, I know I had y'all lined up. I have an author lined up, a chef, but everyone's been like super flexible, which has been really nice. And, I prefer to space it out because I feel like that's exactly what's going to happen, especially if I'm drinking. Like, at some point, there's going to be a running joke where it's just me saying the same fucking line. It's going to happen.
What's nice about recording in advance and editing as opposed to the BTR model, just running them live like we used to do, which is rough. And you have to deal with all the technical glitches. Oh, God, let's not get into that. BTR is a horror show. But advertisement for Black Talk Radio, don't use them. But anyway, what happens is you are able to record at your leisure. So you might want to record at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday. And maybe you think, okay, I've got a couple things lined up or a couple people I want to talk to or whatever. And you can record those things on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, or Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, and Wednesday. But you don't want to schedule them Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of the next week to air. You want to schedule them, okay, well, I got one for this month and one for next month and one for 2 months from now. So I'm way the hell ahead. And now I can record 7 other podcasts or I can go to sleep for 3 months. It doesn't matter. And that's what we've been doing more with Weird Scenes lately. It's just like, yeah, I've got another show in the can. We recorded it, but I'm just not editing it yet. I'm kind of concentrating on doing my third eye reviews and catching up over there, and then I'll edit it and then I will get it up. So anybody who's wondering if there's another episode sitting in the can, yes, there is, and it will be coming sometime, probably in April sometime. But yeah, it's better to do it that way, space it out naturally.
Dude, I also said fuck editing, honestly. Like, I'll be real honest about that. Like, as far as anyone that listens so far, it's just been straight talk. Like what this is gonna get uploaded probably tonight, and like I'll release it tomorrow, and
Nice.
I'm just gonna be like, well, it's because, dude, fuck that, man. Like, I get the quality of it. Don't get me wrong. Like, once it starts sounding like shit, sure, I'll definitely get better equipment and stuff. But I don't know. A part of me was just like, dude, like, fuck it. I mean, this is a raw, unedited show for a reason. Like, we have like these conversations that like we're never going to reanimate. And I think that's my goal for the most part. Because one, also, I'm lazy, but two, I also just think I want to stay as genuine and natural as I possibly can. But I'll hats off to anyone that does edit and do that shit. Because like, I'm not a sound producer and probably never will be, but it's pretty dope to see them work their magic.
Yeah, I always edited Third Eye, even though it was the BTR recording, because we were able to do those in advance as a private show, if you will, as opposed to being a live show like we did with when we aired everything else. And the reason for that is because you're chatting with these people, they don't know who you are. Oh, you were this show. Oh, okay. I had some chat in the beginning, which I'd often leave in, but sometimes they wanted me to lop off. Sometimes people would tell me a story or two that they're like, well, we really shouldn't relate this because this will cause trouble because I got to work with this guy or I work with this company or, I might meet this guy again and, he did something in a drug deal or whatever the hell it is. You'd be surprised at some of the stories some people tell you, honestly.
That's fucking
like,
crazy. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know.
back, can you edit that out? I'm like, okay, but it was a great story. I can kind of cut the names out if you want. Like, no, just edit that out. All right, fine. So, that might come out, but mostly, yeah, it's what you hear. I don't like to edit that much. It's more of just getting rid of the ums and ahs. And if somebody specifically says, get that piece out, all right, if you need to. I'll put up a fight, but I'll take it out.
Well, this is my disclaimer. If there's an edit, it probably won't happen, but just let me know. So that's why
I like my episode very raw. I hardly edit. I mean, I don't. All I do is add the intro and then the music, the background music. But other than that, like if I said it, then it was probably meant for me to say it. But yeah, it just goes from there. And it's been working out. And like you said, I definitely need to pace myself with it because I post when I do it.
Was that there? I think you cut out.
Oops. You lost Kenneth. Now you might need to edit out.
Yeah, no shit, right? Hey, Kenneth, you still there?
Did he just come back?
I don't know. I think we lost him, bro.
I'm sure he'll call back.
I mean, he's on the call according to this. That's funny. I mean, I don't know what I should do at this point. I guess the show's fucked. We're gonna have to redo it.
I don't see him. I'm looking at the screen down there, and it looks like you've got me and you.
Here, well, on my screen it says opposite, but let me see. Let me just, dude, what the fuck happened? That's super funny. Let's see. Oh shit.
Yeah, he probably doesn't know he's off.
Yeah, I don't know what happened here.
Yeah,
He's not even in my group.
Really? Wow, what happened there?
Dude, he got kicked. Well, I guess it's a good time to stop, I guess.
All right. Well, I don't think we ever got to the show topic.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think at this point we're just scrapping that entirely because that went on pretty long, and I could only imagine if we talk about movies, we're gonna fucking
we're going forever too. I mean, I'm open to coming back if you ever need it, but hey.
No, I'm down to bring both of y'all back. I just don't know what happened to Kenneth. Oh wait, let me see if I can bring him back. He's I don't know what happened to him, but I'm actually adding him now. But yeah, dude, I guess at this point that's a good stopping point.
Yeah, so you want me to just drop some links?
Yeah. I was about to say, if you want, man, tell them where they can find you.
All right. So if you want to hear some of our, as I put it, patented brand of convivial joviality, my Dinner with Andre style, personal, philosophical, and filmic tangentiality and humor, you can join me and Mr. Lewis Paul for Weird Scenes Inside the Goldmine, which is at weirdscenes1.wordpress.com. That's our main site. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/Weird Scenes One. We're on Twitter at Weird Scenes One. And of course, we're also on thirdeyecinema.podbean.com with an iTunes feed, which is itunes.apple.com, US podcast, Third Eye Cinema, Weird Scenes Inside the Goldmine podcast. It all goes together like that. And if you're looking for an ID number, just so those who are particular, it's 553-402-044. But of course, you can get that off of the WordPress site. And Third Eye Cinema, which is the main leg of the venture, if you will. We got all sorts of stuff being reviewed over there. We've done audio drama reviews. Those of you who are into stuff like, Doctor Who and the old Avengers TV series and things like that. We did a lot of that. We did a lot of literary reviews. I mentioned Decadent Authors. We did a lot of film review. We still do. For companies like Vinegar Syndrome and Pink Aga and God knows who else. We've done, and we still do, music review for all sorts of people. Literally hundreds of bands every month. It was a monthly thing. I did a big rundown. These days, it's more of a ad hoc when I can get some in, so they were shorter but still entertaining. And that's all over at thirdeyecinema.wordpress.com. Also Facebook, facebook.com/Third Eye Cinema, Twitter at Third Eye Cinema, and again, the same thirdeyecinema.podbean.com or Third Eye Cinema Weird Scenes Inside the Goldmine podcast at iTunes. So,
Hey, it looks like Kenneth is back. Hey, Kenneth, you back?
Yeah.
There
Yeah,
we
I'm back.
go. Hey, did you want to finish what you were saying last? Because honestly, I forgot.
Oh yeah, I forgot what I was saying too. So don't worry about it.
Okay, at this point, we were actually cutting off the show because we're just like, well, he left, so we don't know where to go from here. But tell them where they could find you, bro. Where they could listen.
Okay. All right, you can find me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, at Positive Minds Only. Also, I have a Facebook page, Positive Minds Only. You can find me on Instagram at Positive Minds Only as well. And I'm a life coach as well. I forgot to mention that I'm a life coach, not only just a podcaster but a father. So, that's where you can find me. I really don't have too much to say after that. Like, this was a dope conversation. Thank you for definitely having me, and I would love to be back on here or have you guys on my podcast one day.
Yeah, I was saying the same.
All about it, dude. Hell yeah. Well, that wraps up Shoot the Shit podcast today. Obviously, we talked a lot. We didn't even get to the main topic, so we would probably see Kenneth and Gene back here talking about movies next time. Because obviously, we fucking went on to this really huge trip about perspective and how we feel our culture needs to be more driven and all this other neat stuff. But all in all, definitely like and subscribe on my YouTube channel. All my podcasts goes up there. We do have Shoot the Shit Gaming as well. We've been playing a lot of Call of Duty Warzone, so check it out. I'm not that good, so don't expect greatness. And all in all, again, if you guys want to be on the show, throw a shout out. You could find me on Facebook. Definitely working on a like page on Instagram. But appreciate y'all coming, and hopefully next time you guys could shoot the shit.
Thank you.
It was fun.